Kalaba exposes Hichilema's presidency, the power struggle Zambia can't ignore. Kelvin Bwalya Kalaba has turned up the heat on President Hakainde Hichilema. His speeches are sharper. His language more confrontational. Supporters call it bold leadership. Critics warn it's reckless overreach. But in Zambian politics, strong rhetoric can build momentum or destroy credibility. Tonight, we examine Kalaba versus Hichilema, separating words from record, strategy from risk. Good day, viewers. Welcome to another edition of InspirAfrica Official. I'm Nakash. I hope you're having a great week so far. We're coming to you with some absolutely explosive developments from Zambia that are shaking the very foundations of the nation's political establishment. Our lead story today: a former insider breaks his silence, and what he reveals could change everything. Picture this: the gleaming corridors of State House, where power is supposed to serve the people. But behind closed doors, what if the machinery of government has been hijacked? What if the promises that swept a president into office have become nothing more than echoes in empty rooms? Harry Kalaba, once a trusted ally, a cabinet minister, a man who stood shoulder to shoulder with President Hakainde Hichilema during the struggle for democracy, has now emerged from the shadows with allegations so damning, they cannot be ignored. What happens when a political partnership forged in opposition crumbles under the weight of broken promises? When does loyalty transform into confrontation? And what dark secrets lie beneath the surface of a presidency that promised a new dawn? Is this a legitimate exposé of presidential overreach and democratic backsliding? Or is it the calculated move of a political opportunist positioning himself for power? And perhaps most critically, if these allegations hold even a fraction of truth, what does it mean for Zambia's democratic future? What does it mean for the millions who believed in change? The battle lines have been drawn. The accusations have been made. And Zambia is watching. Factual foundation, background and timeline. The revelation came to light in a series of public statements and media appearances that have dominated Zambian political discourse over recent weeks. Harry Kalaba, leader of the Citizens' First Party and former Minister of Foreign Affairs under the Patriotic Front government, has launched what can only be described as a full-scale assault on President Hakainde Hichilema's governance record and leadership style. To understand the gravity of this moment, we need to rewind. Kalaba and Hichilema were once united in purpose. During the years when the Patriotic Front under Edgar Lungu held power, opposition voices like Kalaba found themselves increasingly marginalized. After leaving the PF in 2018, citing concerns about the direction of the party, Kalaba formed Citizens First, a movement he claimed would restore integrity to Zambian politics. When Hichilema's United Party for National Development finally secured victory in the August 2021 elections, ending the PF's decade-long rule, many saw it as vindication for opposition figures who had fought against what they termed authoritarian tendencies. Kalaba was among those who celebrated the transition. But the honeymoon didn't last. By early 2023, murmurs of discontent began emerging from opposition circles. Kalaba's public statements grew sharper. He began questioning government appointments, economic policies, and what he described as a growing culture of intolerance within the UPND administration. The situation reached a critical mass in recent months. In a series of press conferences and television interviews, Kalaba systematically laid out what he calls a pattern of presidential overreach, vindictiveness, and betrayal of democratic principles. He's accused Hichilema of running a government that punishes dissent, rewards sycophancy, and has abandoned the very reformist agenda that brought it to power. The specific charges are serious: politicization of law enforcement agencies, selective application of anti-corruption measures, economic mismanagement, and what Kalaba terms State House capture, where critical decisions bypass constitutional structures and flow directly from the president's office. Direct evidence, quotes and testimony. Kalaba has not held back in his public statements. In a widely circulated interview, he addressed the issue of political persecution head-on. What we're seeing is not the democracy that we fought for. When you have law enforcement agencies being weaponized against political opponents, when you have the police selectively deciding who to investigate based on phone calls from State House, that's not the rule of law. That's rule by law. There's a difference. When pressed by the interviewer about specific examples, Kalaba became more animated. Look at what happened with former ministers from the previous government. I'm not saying they should be immune from prosecution, far from it. But when you arrest people before investigating, when you parade them before cameras, when their cases drag on without conclusion while they're publicly humiliated, what message does that send? It says, we're not seeking justice, we're seeking revenge. The interviewer asked him directly, are you saying President Hichilema personally directs these actions? Kalaba paused, choosing his words carefully. I'm saying that there is a culture, there is an atmosphere that comes from the top. When the president surrounds himself with people who tell him only what he wants to hear, when dissenting voices within his own party are sidelined or purged, when cabinet ministers are afraid to speak their minds, that tells you everything. Power has concentrated. And absolute power, as we know, corrupts absolutely. But perhaps Kalaba's most damning comments came when discussing economic management. We were promised jobs. We were promised lower cost of living. We were promised transparency in how our resources, our copper, our minerals, would be managed. What have we gotten instead? The kwacha is weaker. Food prices are astronomical. Unemployment is still through the roof. And when we ask questions, when we demand accountability, we're told we're saboteurs, we're enemies of progress. He leaned forward, his voice rising. I was in government. I know how it works. And I can tell you that there are decisions being made in State House that bypass Treasury, that bypass Cabinet, that bypass Parliament. Mining deals, infrastructure contracts, debt restructuring negotiations, all happening in secrecy. Who benefits? We don't know. But I can tell you who doesn't benefit, the ordinary Zambian struggling to feed their family. In another exchange, Kalaba addressed accusations that his criticisms are motivated by personal ambition. People will say, oh, Kalaba is bitter. He wanted a position and didn't get it. Let them say what they want. I've been offered positions. I've been approached. And I've said no because I cannot in good conscience be part of a system that has lost its way. My credibility, my integrity, that's worth more than a ministerial post or a board appointment. Deeper analysis, implications and reactions. Kalaba's allegations have not occurred in a vacuum. They've sparked fierce debate across Zambia's political spectrum and raised fundamental questions about the trajectory of the country's democracy. From the UPND government's perspective, these accusations are baseless and politically motivated. Government spokesperson Cornelius Mwitwa dismissed Kalaba's claims, stating, Mr. Kalaba is entitled to his opinions, but he should substantiate his allegations with evidence. The New Dawn government has made tremendous strides in combating corruption, improving governance, and restoring fiscal discipline. Those who benefited from the previous system naturally feel uncomfortable with accountability. But Kalaba's critique resonates with broader concerns expressed by civil society organizations, some media outlets, and even sections of the ruling party uncomfortable with certain government actions. The Law Association of Zambia has previously raised questions about due process and high-profile arrests. Economic analysts have pointed to persistent inflation and currency depreciation as evidence that promised economic transformation has yet to materialize. And opposition parties across the spectrum, from the Patriotic Front to smaller formations, have echoed concerns about what they term democratic backsliding. Political analyst Dr. Sishiwa noted in a recent commentary, what Kalaba represents is a voice from outside the traditional PF-UPND dichotomy. He cannot be easily dismissed as a bitter loser from the previous regime. His criticisms therefore carry a particular weight, especially among voters who are disillusioned with both major parties. The timing of Kalaba's offensive is also significant. With general elections scheduled for 2026, opposition figures are positioning themselves. Kalaba has made clear his presidential ambitions, and his strategy appears to be presenting himself as an alternative to what he frames as two failed establishments. But there are deeper, more troubling questions embedded in this confrontation. Is Zambia witnessing the normal rough and tumble of competitive democracy, or is there genuine erosion of democratic norms? The accusations of State House interference in law enforcement and judiciary are particularly serious. If true, they suggest institutional capture that undermines the separation of powers essential to constitutional governance. Similarly, concerns about economic decision-making bypassing formal structures point to potential governance deficits. Transparency International and other watchdog organizations have emphasized that opacity in resource management creates opportunities for corruption and elite capture. Yet skeptics argue that Kalaba himself served in a government, the PF administration, that faced similar accusations of authoritarianism, corruption, and economic mismanagement. Does his own record undermine his credibility as a critic? This is the ambiguity at the heart of Zambia's current political moment. There are legitimate governance concerns that deserve scrutiny. But the messengers raising these concerns often carry their own baggage, complicating public assessment of their motives and credibility. What remains clear is that this confrontation between Kalaba and Hichilema reflects broader tensions in Zambian democracy. The concentration of power, the treatment of opposition voices, the transparency of economic governance, the independence of institutions, these are not partisan issues. They are fundamental to whether Zambia consolidates or regresses in its democratic journey. Thank you so much for watching today's edition of InspirAfrica Official. This story is far from over. As Zambia moves closer to the 2026 elections, expect these tensions to intensify. The question is whether this confrontation will produce genuine accountability and reform, or simply more political theater. We want to hear from you. What do you make of Kalaba's allegations? Is he a credible voice for democratic accountability, or an opportunist seeking political relevance? Do you see evidence of the authoritarian tendencies he describes, or do you believe the government is unfairly maligned? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's have a respectful, informed conversation about the future of democracy in Zambia and across our continent. We'll be back tomorrow with more stories that matter, more analysis that cuts through the noise, and more conversations about building the Africa we all deserve. Until then, stay informed, stay engaged, and stay inspired. This is Nakash, signing off.